Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to watch the video today. Always appreciate that. Hey guys, today I want to have a little conversation about when you should swim a jig or when you should pitch and flip a jig, and sometimes when you can do both at the same time. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I just got finished up with the Toyota Series tournament here on Lake of the Ozarks, and I wound up catching all of my bass in this tournament on my Blaukat throwback jig. And I was doing both with it. I was actually pitching and flipping it, and I was also swimming it sometimes. So we're going to go over the scenarios to do that in today's video. Also, guys, speaking of my throwback jig, if you guys are interested in picking some up, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys would like to order some of my throwback jigs. And also, I think some of them are on back order. If you don't want to wait on them, you can order them at the Cumberland Pro Lures website. So I'll put that link in the description also. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, here's the scenario when you want to swim a jig and when you want to pitch and flip a jig. A lot of it has to do with the cover that you're fishing, the depth of the cover that you're fishing, and the water clarity. All that situations together. Now, for me, one of the pieces of the puzzle when I like to swim a jig is it has to do with the mood and the personality of the bass, whether if they're in a chasing mode or not. Now, the chasing mode of it can have a lot of different factors. It can have to do with wind, have to do with the light level, sunlight condition, and there's really no rhyme or reason, because I've seen sometimes when they'll chase when it's sunny, I've seen sometimes when they'll chase when it's cloudy, and I've seen other times when they don't chase when it's cloudy or sunny. So that's something you just sort of have to experiment with a little bit. The next time is, as far as swimming a jig, I think water clarity is real important. I really feel that you need to have about anywhere between, say, 6 inches to no more than 1.5 feet to have good situation for swimming a jig. Actually, about 6 to 12 inches is perfect. Stained water is ideal scenario, and you have to have that cover that's in fairly shallow water. So perfect situation for swimming a jig would be around whatever cover you're fishing. It could be rock, wood, grass, docks, anything like that. When the cover is in, say, less than 3 foot of water, and you've got 6 inches to 12 inches of visibility, and the water temperatures also are over 60 degrees. Swimming a jig works best when the water temperature is between 60 and 80 degrees. Now, the flipping and pitching part of it, it's like sometimes you have to do both. Now, I'll give you guys an example of what I'm talking about. In this tournament that I just got done fishing, I was flipping a lot of different type of cover. Docks, lay down logs. Sometimes there were like pilings and posts in the water. Now, anytime that I came to a shallow dock, like a dock that was in less than 2 foot of water, or a piece of cover that was in really shallow water, I would swim that throwback jig through that cover. I'd keep my rod tip high, and I'd shake it, and I'd try to keep it just barely out of sight, even in that dirty water. The water I was fishing had probably less than 1 foot of visibility, so I try to keep it just out of sight and swim it over the top of that shallow cover or alongside a dock or anything like that. Now, if I came to a little bit deeper cover, say for example the logs were in 3 or 4 foot of water, or maybe the docks were in 4, 5, or 6 feet of water, that is when I'd pitch and flip in there with the same deal. Same jig, same situation, just pitching and flipping around if it's a little bit deeper cover. Ultimately though, it seems like to me that when you're on a pitching and flipping bite, if you have some type of target that you don't have to penetrate, in other words, if you're not like flipping into the middle of a bush or flipping into a grass bed or something like that, if you have something that you can swim that jig by like the same way you would a spinnerbait or crankbait or chatterbait, it can be highly effective to swim a jig because it's a silent lure. And a lot of times, bass don't really like lures that telegraph itself, that puts out a lot of water displacement and vibration and noise. And that jig doesn't put out much water displacement, other than if you got flapping tails on it or something. It's a quiet bait, and sometimes they really prefer that. Another thing that's important, guys, when you're swimming a jig or pitching and flipping, is the size of the jig in terms of weight is really critical. Most of the time when I'm swimming a jig, I'm either using anywhere between a 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce. Now, if sometimes the fish want a little faster, like if the water's a little bit warmer, or maybe it's a little bit on the cleaner side, like closer to the 12-inch visibility side, that's when I'll go to a half-ounce jig. 25-pound test Seaguard Vizex line, keeping my rod tip high. Same deal, just shaking it under the surface. And if the water's a little bit cooler, or if the water's really dirty, where I need to keep that bait in the strike zone a little bit longer, that's when I'll go to the 3/8 size and slow it down. Another thing about that is your trailer is really critical in terms of being able to do both. Like in this tournament, I was using that Zoom Magnum Speed Craw. I usually like to use a chunk most of the time in my jig fishing, like a super chunk or a big salty chunk by Zoom. But in this situation, I use the curly tailed one simply because I was mixing it up, flipping and pitching it and swimming it. And you'll find that you get a lot more bites on a jig if you have some type of a curly tailed leg on it rather than a chunk on it. But anyway, guys, that's just sort of an overview. It's a fun way to catch them. Swimming a jig is one of the funnest ways to catch a fish. You know, a lot of times they'll really hit it hard. It's a good way to catch big ones. Big fish will hit it. And we'll do some more videos in the future on it. But I just wanted to pass that little tidbit along to you guys. Hope you guys are well. Talk later.